Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. My name is Mark, and I'm here with Brent.
Hello, everybody.
And we're a little bit fired up today. Would you say that, Brent?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit. So this would be more of a general episode /
A lot of ranting.
Rant. Yeah, a little bit of ranting. We just want to talk about a few things related to Canada and money and people leaving Canada and why.
How much do you trust the news?
Which news?
In general, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it's funded by the government, not so
full
much.
Confidence.
Yeah, so that's most major media outlets in the country now, right?
Yeah.
At least partially funded. So not much. Why do you ask, Brent?
Well, we're gonna go talk about a bunch of news articles, and I don't know. Can we trust this stuff? This has a Government of Canada website, canada.ca. So
you definitely can't trust that. Okay, here's one of the ones that kind of kicked it off for us. Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, did an interview with the Globe and Mail.
On a podcast?
On a podcast, right? So he said, housing needs to retain its value. It's a huge part of people's potential for retirement and future nest egg. So that's a really big statement, right?
Yeah.
So, because what he's saying is we can't have house prices decline, at least not meaningfully. And I mean, you could argue they already have from COVID highs. But this is actually of all the things that, this government, and we'll get into it, all the ridiculous things that they concern themselves with. I don't know. He must have been paying attention or doing some
real estate investing
on, maybe that's it. They all own multiple houses. So
he's getting to retirement age.
No, but this is actually a serious topic and that he has an opinion on. And it's very telling, right?
What his opinion is telling.
Yeah, not that housing needs to go down so that it's affordable for everybody, because he realizes how important real estate and housing prices are to Canada's economy, and the fact that, there's so many people who may not have retirement plans, but they got a house, and that's their retirement plan, right?
Yeah, so what he's actually saying is all these people who currently own houses are getting up there in age, are going to retire.
Yeah.
They need the value of those houses to stay high in order for their retirement to be secure.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's going to be chaos and nobody's going to be able to afford retirement. So what's he saying then? That the housing prices can't come crashing down?
Yeah.
They shouldn't? So the government will do what they can to hold them up?
That's what it sounds like, right?
All right, he has my vote.
If they're saying this can't happen, then... he'll do everything he can not to make that happen. So then, okay, what are you doing for younger people? Because he's acknowledged that affordability for younger folks is harder. So, what are they going to do? And we've had some inklings of this, right? They did that increased amortization plan for young people buying, or for people buying their first home, which would be a new build, like new construction. So I think it's like the first little foot in the door, like a little wedge, right? Let's try increasing amortizations in a very niche market. And then, because we talked about this before, right? We're going to see 40, 50, 60-year amortizations at some point.
Those are policy changes that hold the house prices up.
Yes.
Essentially. Yes,
but also make it easier for people to get into the market, right? If you can double your amortization, it's not gonna cut your payments in half, but it'll cut them significantly, right? So while still retaining the value of that asset. So this is one thing I think is a slam dunk, and we may even see that in the next year or two, because we're going into an election, and they're going to be throwing everything they can at this election, right?
Yeah, well, there's an article, betterdwelling.com, that kind of breaks down this comment a little bit, and they asked the question: if the intention was to never lower home prices, what was with the tens of billions spent on improving housing affordability about? So they took all these tens of billions of dollars from taxpayers and they spent it to try to improve affordability. But If you never wanted to actually lower the price, because
did they actually spend it? And B, did they actually increase affordability? Like we've talked about this, right? What are they doing? They're increasing. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth,
though, right? Because they're saying we want to retain the house value for the people who are retiring and need the value to fund their retirement, and we also want to make it affordable for everyone else who doesn't have a house yet.
Yeah.
So we're going to take money from everybody. We're going to spend it to make it more affordable. But we also don't want to decrease like, how can you achieve both of those?
Well, so the way that they've been going at it, you can, right? We've talked about how they're spending money and they're making announcements about like, oh, look at all these, affordable housing units we just built. Like, no, you had nothing to do with it. They were going to get built. You just offered better financing. And that's really, I think, where most of that money is going. But that doesn't increase affordability. Like, yeah, maybe there's some more affordable housing in there, but it's a drop in the bucket. Doesn't do anything for the average person who's not going to qualify for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Right. As a government program. So the only thing they can do in this situation is have payments be lowered. Well, the asset is still worth, right? It's like buying a vehicle, right? You can get like 72-month financing or 80-month, I think.
72-year financing?
Well, it's essentially for the life of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? And like that never, when I was growing up, that never used to be a thing. No, but you didn't have those terms. But
we didn't have cars.
No, we did.
Oh.
They had a hole though in the floorboard. You had to use your feet to paddle.
One of those.
Yeah. It was a big, they're made of rock. It's the Flintstone special. So anyways, I think that's really the only thing I can think of quickly that they'd be able to do that. But it's okay.
You're just getting all fired up.
I can't even talk anymore. No, there's never a government policy or program that you can take at face value. So when he's saying this, what is he really saying? Like, what does he care? Honestly, if housing is affordable. I mean, yeah, it sounds good. Or if housing retains its value. Because the more politically expedient thing for young voters would be to crash housing prices. That would lose you a lot of votes from the older people, which arguably are the people who vote. So not a good idea. But really, what's behind it? What's behind it is there's a huge amount of cash, and they've talked about this, the Liberal government, is like there's this big amount of cash, big wealth transfer waiting to happen. And so boomers can't take advantage of the savings in their house unless they sell that house.
Yeah, to somebody who can afford to buy it, who is a young person who can't afford to buy it.
Yeah, but that's where maybe longer payment terms come in, right? But they have to actually do something with that house. And so for your primary residence, there's no taxation yet. But for any investment properties, once they sell it, there's more taxation. We've just seen, right, they're proposing to decrease capital gains exemption, which means essentially more tax on stuff like this. And again, I think that's just the foot in the door.
Yeah.
I think that's like a little test flag that they're putting out to see like what's the reaction going to be? What will this do if we do it like just a small little thing, right? So does that mean eventually we're going to see the capital gains exemption lifted from primary homes? I think is a good possibility, right? As we run out of
why do you say
money,
that? Because the government wants to access some of those increases.
Yes.
To fund the further spending on housing to make it more affordable.
Well, where's all the money in this country?
It's in real estate. Well, let's pull up the chart here. We got the chart.
Okay.
People can see this. This is Statista.com. So the gross domestic product, GDP of Canada in February 2024 by industry.
Okay.
So we kind of took this chart and just put some colors on it.
So this isn't like static wealth, but it's a measure of like the growth of wealth creation, essentially, right?
Yeah. Where's the money?
Yeah.
So real estate, rental, and leasing is like by far the biggest one.
Which is crazy
in Canada's economy. But we've highlighted, so like there's construction, which is another one that's also large, and finance and insurance, which is a lot to do with financing real estate and insuring real estate, like other things as well. But that contributes a huge amount to Canada's GDP.
And they're all in the top 10, even the top,
like,
what is that, top 6?
Yeah. And then the red ones, which is like make up the rest of the top 10 is all government spending, healthcare, social assistance, public administration, like those sorts of things.
Yeah. You've got manufacturing coming in second.
Yeah.
And then one thing I wanted to point out, where is oil and gas?
Right here, this little blue one.
And forestry. Okay. So that's maybe, is that in the top 10?
15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Wow.
Something like that.
So the thing that I think, anyways, the thing that we should be most well known for and the biggest part of our economy, because of the abundance of resources that we have, is oil and gas and other resource extraction. But we've killed it. And I'd be interested to see these numbers from like 10 years ago, because I'm sure it was much higher on the list. So now we're a country of real estate speculators instead of people taking advantage. Well,
and what does that mean? Like the Prime Minister's comments there about housing need to retain its value, or needing to retain its value. That is true. Like if you have an economy where real estate and leasing is the number one part of your GDP by quite a long shot, and there's no really argument to say that's going to be a smaller percentage of your economy, then you need to retain its value, right? Somehow, I don't know.
It is the economy.
Yeah. Like, so if you don't do that, well, where's all the money coming to tax?
So
not good.
Yeah. I mean, if you own a home, it's great.
So another comment he made in that article in that podcast was the difference between someone who's rented all their life versus someone who is a homeowner in terms of the money that they have for retirement is massive. And that's not necessarily always fair. What's he saying there? Yeah.
Okay. It's not fair. I mean, who determines what's fair? And if something isn't fair, should it be remedied?
Yeah.
Right. Like,
and if it should be remedied, who should remedy it? The government?
Well, clearly they're the arbiter of what's fair and what's unfair, right? But then how do you do that? Right? So, I mean, and this is why I think that taxation is going to be a big issue, because what governments love to do, especially progressive governments, is redistribute wealth. That's all we hear about is redistribution of equity, of power, of privilege, and certainly of wealth, right? I think that's just a given on the sort of progressive side of the spectrum, is that if there is wealth, and especially if there's an imbalance, it just has to be redistributed, right? Look at any South American country where they've had socialist
this
governments,
all ties
right?
together, right? It's equality everywhere, and then you talk about money leaving Canada. I think that's one of your items on your list.
Yeah,
right? People are like, how can I get out of this country?
Well, because I hate to sound like that. The capitalist fat cat. Where I worked hard for my money, and nobody's going to take it from me. Like that's not necessarily a Christian attitude.
Yeah.
But there is something, the Bible does speak about the value of working hard and then reaping the rewards for working hard.
Yeah.
And you share that because it's not yours.
The base of it is private property, right? The fact that thou shalt not steal assumes that, well, what you have is your belonging, like your private property, it belongs to you.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, our view is that, okay, it belongs to God, but we have stewardship over it.
Yeah.
So fine. But I have stewardship over that. It's my responsibility. And I'm going to do what I think should be done with it. And, but that's part of the problem too, right? When we expect the government to do everything for us, then that means we're even more tight-fisted with our money, because that's the government's problem. I'm not going to do anything about this. I got mine. Yeah. And that's it.
The government's going to make housing affordable. I don't have to do anything.
Well, exactly. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but you really got me. You really got me on a tear here, Brent.
Oh.
Wealth redistribution, right? So that would be that's why I think this would be the goal, is some kind of taxation on primary residences before this cohort of the population transfers the wealth to their children or whoever. Yeah, to their children, because they still have children, the boomers, right?
Yeah.
They still had like 2, 3, 4 kids.
I'm just thinking the use of these houses. So if an older person is living in, let's say a 2,000 square foot single family home, a detached home, and all their wealth is so-called like for retirement in that home.
Yeah.
And eventually they're going to move out because,
Yeah.
We all die. So, but you move out to downsize or go into
you go to
assisted living
retirement
or something,
community,
right? Yeah. You end up in there. So what actually happens to that house, right? Who buys that house? If the value is there, right? Like who's paying that value? And how does he think, like the Prime Minister, think that the value will be retained? Like if nobody's stepping in with, like I think you said off air, like you need $200K to afford a house like that and an income, right? And not the average person doesn't have that. Is that going to be able to be sustained?
Well, if you lower increase amortization, if you lower the payments, then people can afford it.
Yeah. So increase the amount. So who wins in that case, right? If you extend the amortization, well, the bank wins because they're getting double or triple the interest.
They're getting the equivalent of 2 or 3 loans without them having to do any legwork.
Yeah. But my other thought is, well, okay, if that 2,000 square foot home is actually worth, let's say 1.2 or 1.5 or $2 million or whatever, well, it basically needs to be subdivided into smaller houses for the average person to be able to afford 1/4 of it.
Yeah.
Right. That's where we're going.
You were looking at home starts and stuff, right? I don't know if you have any numbers there.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but home starts at 40-year record lows.
Yeah. So, I think, okay, we got to make a prediction here, Brent. We got to make a few predictions because there's interest rate announcement coming on the day we release as well.
Okay.
But I think we've kind of seen the death of new single family housing in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Housing starts have dropped. So any new homes that, no new projects are being started. Anything that was sort of in the works, okay, fine, they'll finish off. I don't know that there's an incentive for home builders to build any more single family homes.
Yeah.
And this is I'm just spouting this off the top of my head. Maybe we should get a home builder in here. But if there's going to be no demand, right? Obviously they're dying for a reason because there's no demand. If there's going to be no demand in the future, which I think there's going to be very little purpose-built rentals or even porpoise-built rentals, as we've talked about under the water. Yes, that demand I think will come back because it's smaller units.
Yeah. Well, the only way that they could see a rise not the only way, but probably the biggest way is for lenders to somehow incentivize the creation of these through favorable financing, right? So that developers can make the numbers work and homeowners can buy it at a reasonable price. But
they're never going to do that for single family homes.
No. Why would they? It doesn't help it helps housing in the sense that you're building housing, but you can take the same resources and put them towards an apartment building and help housing in a much different or much better way, right? Faster.
Yeah. And so we've been kind of banging the drum on this for a little while, right? We're going to look at, multi-generational homes, smaller living spaces for people because we just look at Europe, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is, right? We have big houses here, we got big everything, but compared to what they're used to, you just don't see that there because of, supply constraints, because of, land restraints. Kind of ridiculous, right? We have so much land here, but we're all squeezed into a little sliver along the border. But anyways, I think that's the future, right? Just smaller spaces and homes that are subdivided, like you said. So the single family home, we probably won't build anymore, but the ones that we have, unless you're making $200,000 a year, you can't afford that. So what's the answer? I mean, what you've been doing, right? Intensification, what a lot of people have been looking at, right? Add a duplex. Okay, make it a triplex. Okay, now let's add an ADU. So you got 3-4 units. And so we were talking about this off air as well, right? What can the government really do to incentivize more housing, right? They want to build 6 million by 2031. It's like a house every second or something, right? Not going to happen, guys. But what you could do, and what they do with multifamily, 5 units or above, is make the financing more attractive. That's, I think, the easiest and most critical thing the government could do.
Yeah.
They're not going to actually build homes, but incentivize behavior, right? That's essentially what our whole tax system is.
Yeah.
So incentivize the building of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. So taking a single family home and dividing it up. Now, a lot of people may not like that, but that's where we are with the population we have, with the housing supply we have. It's what we have to do.
There's the housing supply angle to this, right? Where, you can take a house, you subdivide it, you have multiple units. Now you have, with the same amount of infrastructure, you have, let's say, 4 times as much housing or 3 times as much housing. Okay, great. Yep. You can house more people. So the housing supply, like that crisis kind of diminishes or goes away. But the affordability thing, and like those houses, once you subdivide them, they're not going to be like, each unit in the house is not going to be owned by the occupant, right? It's going to be owned by one landowner who owns the complex or the lot.
Yeah.
And there's 4 to 6 or 8 or whatever units on that lot. And unless you condominiumize it somehow, which can be done, but is also not necessarily going to work in every case and probably not the right way to do it. But, the individual people who move into these units are not going to be owners. So if you're looking at like the long-term retirement plans of the next generation and the affordability of housing, like this is a way to house more people, but it's not going to necessarily help them build wealth if they don't own a piece of it. So I don't know what the solution is there, but...
Well, I think there's an important lesson for investors there, that, because we're going to talk about, people moving to the US and capital moving out of Canada, and like, maybe, because, what we've been talking about, investing in Canadian real estate, like, is that just dead? Is that gone? And so like, no, but I don't think so. But the divide is just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So we've seen more investor purchases.
The divide,
of
you mean
homes,
the divide,
like an increasing divide between the haves and have-nots, essentially, right? So we've seen the share of investor homes as a percentage of sales go up every year, which is like, it's not surprising, because if investors have equity in properties, they have the money to buy more properties. Young folks don't have the money to afford these, and I think it's just going to continue. And as you said, that single family home is going to be, maybe it's somebody who buys it and is going to divide it up. But if you think of, let's say, like a young couple buying their first home, which isn't everybody, but like they don't have money to professionally install a duplex or an accessory dwelling unit, right? Not immediately anyways, maybe down the road, or maybe they can build their basement apartment, whatever. But like, who's got the money to do this stuff right away? Investors, because they have other properties. So if you have properties, to he who has much, more will be given. I don't know if that applies here.
So this is biblical.
But, well, it's kind of, it kind of makes sense, right? If you have that capital, you can use it to make more. But if you don't have any, it's so hard to get it and get in. So I don't know. I guess I'm just calling the death of the new single family SFUs in Canada.
All right,
they're all going to be divided up. But the financing is critical, right? Because we were talking about different projects and what a big difference that the financing rates make.
Yeah.
For if you're doing 5 units or above, like it's night and day.
Like if you can do a project with 3 units and you're like $750,000 into it, with that same $750,000, you could be into, say like a 10 unit or 18 unit. Like you can build a lot of units.
Yeah.
With, 100 units. You need more capital to get started, obviously, but like, when you're carrying it and refinancing it, like you can have very low money into these projects, and some of these bigger investors who are able to kind of get this off the ground and manage them, they're pulling all their money out. Like it's a huge opportunity.
It's incredible. So if we could see that, and I know like you're looking at some right now. So if anybody's, anybody wants to get into a big project, call Brent, but if they extended that to like duplexes or triplexes, you would incentivize that building like that, right? Yeah. Because that's what makes these projects happen. Nothing else, right? Not the desire for affordable housing or for intensification or whatever else. It's the financing. If that wasn't there, that stuff would dry up as well. So anyways.
Yeah. Just an interesting comment too, like the Prime Minister's remarks about the need to have these houses stay at a certain value. He's effectively saying that, the future generation is going to have to pay for these people's retirement. And is that like a good thing to say? Like,
what do they say that's good?
Who's he trying to appeal to there? The retire, like, he's trying to appeal to people who are retiring. He's like, yeah, they should pay for my retirement, even though you own all the assets already. Like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, because it's the understanding that they don't have other assets. And this is a generalization, but the vast majority of folks in Canada that are older have most of their wealth tied up in real estate. And that's just been understood like, yep, that's what we do in Canada, and this is an effective thing. So, if you destroy housing, then you destroy the retirement of many, many people. And then also, again, the ability to tax that huge chunk of wealth. So that's where he's at.
The wealth disparity continues. All right.
So yeah, I've been anyways talking with more and more people about moving to the States, or at least investing in the States, right? Because there's so many reasons.
Donald Trump, or
maybe. Well, so it's interesting, right? It's not all strictly driven by economics, right? Like for us, for my wife and myself, we thought, we want more cash flow. We can get more in the States, and the U.S. dollar. There's a number of considerations, right? Yeah. I'd rather be earning U.S. dollars if I can, because Canadian economy doesn't look that great. But that doesn't invalidate what we've been talking about, right? It's kind of reinforced that a little bit, where, if you have property, if you have money, you hold on to that in Canada, because it's only going to get more and more scarce and become more and more valuable. So it's not strictly an economic decision, but a cultural one as well, right? So for us, that's part of the thought is like, where do I want my kids to grow up?
Yeah.
And if I want to change that, I need to, they are growing up here, but, longer term, right? Do I want them to be in Canada still?
Yeah.
Never mind, do I want to be here? Because of whatever's going on. But, in terms of the economy, right? So the economy is not looking great.
Yeah. These are questions mulling around in your head? Or you think they're mulling around in a lot of people's heads?
A lot of people's heads, right? And especially in the last couple of years, right? We've been looking at this for probably 4 or 5 years, and there has already been sort of an exodus of people to the States. So it's, we didn't invent this, and it's been on people's minds, but especially with our economy, and not just the economy, but our ridiculous government. Okay, so here's a good one.
Going off or what?
Oh, that's my phone. Okay, let me pull something up here.
Let me illustrate the problem here. Okay.
Let me illustrate it as with a magic marker on my face. So I can't even.
You gotta turn your phone off for a minute. Put it on your lap off the table.
Oh, cow. I can't. We've said it before. We're not a serious country, and we're not led by serious people. So here's.
If you were watching this.
So this is the ex-mayor of Victoria in British Columbia, and there's a press conference. So there's been a lot of press lately around menstruation awareness, or whatever it is they're calling it, right?
Yeah, menstrual equity.
Menstrual equity. And as a menstrually challenged person, I find this offensive, just in case you're listening, Justin Trudeau. Right. So this has started with the federal government. It's trickling down to different levels of government. But yeah, if you're listening and you can't see this, I mean, you can Google it. But the ex-mayor of Victoria, I don't know why the ex-mayor is making this announcement, but this is like an official announcement.
She's equal with the mayor. So
equal?
She's equal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Anyway, she's making an announcement about the fact that they are going to display a period flag. Like they're going to fly a flag on a flagpole, where it's like, here's the maple leaf, right? Here's
all the values we stand for.
Yeah. Here's our, whether it's the country or the province or whatever. I mean, it's been co-opted in the last few years with like every cause you can think of, and now it's extended to this, to the period flag.
Yeah, and I don't know what that looks like, and I'm not going to Google it.
I'm guessing it's just red, because they also had they're lighting up City Hall, and it was just like red lighting
Right.
at night. But anyway, so she's making this announcement. She has drawn a beard on her face. So like, I've caught my kids doing this from time to time, right? They get a marker and they like draw on their face. I'm like, well, don't do that. That's not going to come off. And then they got marker on their face for a couple of weeks, right? Maybe this is erasable. I don't know, but this is exactly what it looks like. Like that's what my kids did. Yeah. And there's somebody in the background
with a mustache,
a lovely woman with a handlebar mustache drawn on. And like, I can't wrap my, we've been looking at this for a while. I can't wrap my head around this. So there's apparently a stigma around menstruation in this country. I didn't know there was. And so we've seen images.
So I Googled it. It says, on the government, Canada.ca, Government of Canada continues to advance menstrual equity. And it's a statement and from May 28th. Like, I got to look at the news more. Like, do we actually live in this country? You need to look at it less. I know, but do we actually live in this country?
Yeah, like this is so far from, and you know.
Okay, well, so
I'm speechless.
The comment about, you know, having menstrual health products and all this stuff in third world countries makes sense. Like if you're not able to access that, and that's like, there's maybe a stigma around it, but in Canada, I don't.
Yeah, we've heard that, right? Some third world countries, there actually is a stigma, and if you're a girl going to school, all of a sudden you can't go to school because there's no products for you,
or a menstruating person.
Oh, don't even start. I was wondering how they would navigate this.
Yeah, that's the verbiage.
Right? It's not about women's health. It's about menstruators' health. It should be person-strator, by the way.
Person-strator?
Not menstruator. But no, so third world countries, this, like, I've heard this anyways, it's more common that when a girl has her period, all of a sudden she can't go to school because A, there's a stigma, and B, there's no products for her to like be able to sit in a classroom and learn. Yeah. So, okay, like let's, you know, you can do some awareness and so forth. Does that exist in Canada?
It's like we're governed by grade 7 and 8-year-olds.
It is. It's like the teacher said, okay, you guys got to find a cause. Well, yeah, they're either all the boys are giggling and the girls are like, you know, hey, we found a cause and we're going to fight for this, right?
Some people are drawing marker on their face.
It's like we're run by it's a middle school. I don't and you know, again, you can't take this at face value. This isn't really what they're concerned about, right? So, you know, I would say this is just a bit of the
face value is covered in marker.
Face value with a fake beard drawn on. You know, this is just a distraction from the images of homeless people, of drug addicted people, like opioid crisis,
depressed,
of people at food banks, of students protesting. They can't get citizenship,
can't afford a house.
Yeah, all that stuff. So, okay, this is maybe an effective distraction from that, I guess. But every reaction that I've seen and anyone that I've talked to has just been like, what?
Yeah.
Like this? Like who asked for this? Yeah. You know, I'm not denying that women, you know, have periods. Like, yeah, I understand that. And you could even convince me that because this is one of their things, right? All federal bathrooms have hygiene products in them for women. Okay, like, do I think it's necessary? I don't know. I think women can be responsible and have been, and they can, you know, that's why they got purses. But you could convince me that, you know, bathrooms should have these products just in case, like, for accidents and whatever. Fine. But that's a far cry from like this whole awareness campaign and wearing bracelets. You see members of parliament showing off their bracelets, right? Yeah. And it represents the menstrual cycle. And like, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you talking about?
That's one thing, right? So you're kind of bringing up this as a way to highlight some of the reasons why you think the culture of Canada is on a decline, and it's one more way to get out.
But this is just another example. Like, we've had so many examples. This is just the latest one.
Yeah.
And of why there's such a strong cultural impetus for people to get out of Canada, because like do you want your kid, like, do I want to be exposed to this? Do I want my kids to be exposed to this?
Yeah.
And so what are the options for going somewhere else? Is the States that much better? I don't know. I would argue probably southern states, maybe, because we can't forget, right? Politicians play to the crowd. Yeah. And so I doubt there was a lot of people asking for these bracelets, but it's just part of the trend, right?
Yeah.
You get what you deserve as a democratic country, and this is what we asked for. This is what we deserve.
Well, it's the other way. Like as Christians, we're in the world. We're not of the world, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's appalling and shocking. And if you don't watch the news, and all of a sudden you do, like after 4 years of not watching the news, and you see this, like. Okay.
Sorry, Brent.
Yeah. I'm glad I tuned out. I don't know. I'm kind of sorry I tuned in, I guess.
Yeah.
To whatever's going on out there. But yeah, do you make a decision on where to live based on those sorts of things, or how? Like, do you flee from this, or do you witness to this? And that's maybe a deeper question that we need to all think about individually, and we could talk about it here if you want. But
yeah,
I think there's economic reasons you'd want to move, and a lot of people who came to Canada, like Canada's built on immigrants, right? And they move for a reason, right? There's economic opportunity, there's future potential with their kids, and education, start a life, build a family, build a business, so can't argue with, if you see opportunity, like pursue it. But
well, you could.
If you see cultural decline, like just abandon them to their own devices, or.
Well, and that's something we've been kind of wrestling with, right? Like, is it the idea of Lot living in Sodom?
Yeah.
Like, was he wrong to live there? No, maybe not. But when God told him to leave, then like, okay, get out.
Yeah.
And so I think you could argue both ways, right? Yes, he should have stayed there and tried to transform the culture. But at what point are you like, the culture is irredeemable?
Yeah.
Right. And I know there's a number of Christians active in politics in Parliament. And I'm sure that's part of their reasoning is like, we can't just abandon this culture. We want to make a difference and turn it around. Do we have the energy to do that? Like once you add up kind of the economic and the cultural stuff, it's, and just raising children is sort of the concern for me. Like, what do I want my kids? We teach our children, but they also, you can't control everything they see. So do you want them exposed to this day after day all the time?
Well, in a certain sense, like this world is a lot more, it's digital, right? And it's global. Like you're going to go on Twitter if you're connected to social media, and you're going to see, riots over here and this over there and this, like you're going to see everything all the time anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So no matter where you go to the States, you're going to see the same stuff online, right?
Well, you are, but there's a difference between like,
do I live in this country and pay their taxes?
Exactly. Am I supporting this nonsense?
I paid taxes for that guy to draw, or girl to draw a beard on her. Like,
my head hurts. So yeah, everybody has to kind of wrestle with that and pray about that themselves, right? Like, but you can praise God wherever you are. Maybe not any place, but like, if you move from one place to another, well, you can still praise him. You can still evangelize. You can still do those things, whether you're here or, Tennessee or something like that. I guess at some point, like, how much do you want to fight? Right? Yeah. How much do you want to fight that culture? And so I don't know. Is it a cop-out?
Well, and the economic angle is how much theft are you willing to tolerate? Like how much of your wealth or your private property are you willing to have the government take over?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a bad way to look at it?
If they're using it for good things, okay. But if they're just squandering it on ridiculous things.
But also, if you're willingly giving
you.
it, right? Like if you work in this economy and you understand the tax laws and you're willingly handing over your tax money, I guess it's different if they're printing money and they're inflating your wealth away that way. And
I think part of that is just give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, not to like misuse that verse. But the idea is don't be too tied to all this stuff. Like, yeah, you have to work hard and you have to make money and do that. But like, don't let it like drive you crazy. That's part of this world, and we pay our taxes. They're going to do what they do with them. You're never going to have a perfect government that does absolutely everything that they should do with that tax money. So, Caesar's going to be Caesar, I guess. Anyways, yeah, like you said, that was just an example of some of the cultural
and what an example craziness. It was. What an example.
Well,
what else you got?
Well, I'll point out our friends over at Canadian Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
So shout out to those guys. We were just on their podcast a week or two ago. And so they had, they're mainly Bitcoin focused, but they also have what they call a Clown World episode every week as well.
Okay.
Right. And they just go through ridiculous things that are happening, mostly North America centric.
And when you say Clown World, it's news.
It's the news. Yeah, it's not making stuff up. It's not like this would be crazy if this happened. It's like, no, this is happening.
Yeah.
And, there's a reason it's called Clown World, because how else can you describe it? Like what we just talked about, right? Just ridiculous. And there's no shortage of content for them. So, I feel like we should have our own Clown World. Just rip them off and do a Clown World episode.
All right. Joey and Len.
Maybe that's what this is. So, yeah. Check them out. CanadianBitcoiners.com, Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. Language warning if you are going to listen. It is an E for explicit. But, lots of good information from those guys anyways. We were going to talk about maybe a little bit about interest rates.
Yeah, are they going down? I'm predicting that 50-50.
My prediction is it could go up or down or stay the same.
So all the factors are there for them to cut, right? We had Ben Rabideau on, and so his analytics give us a little bit of insight into this. And thankfully, they come out at a timely time before we do the recording this time, so we can actually read what he has to say. But I guess they're looking for two things in order to cut the rates, right? They need to have the core CPI go down and have that kind of trend continue, like an expectation that, inflation is not going to just all of a sudden go down 1 month and then spike back up.
Yeah.
And then a clear downtrend in the inflation expectations. So do we see both of those things? And Ben's saying, yeah, we do. So basically they could cut given that information, right? That's what they've been waiting for in order to cut. But you kind of had a different perspective. You think it might not, but might kick the can further down the road.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the general consensus. There will be some kind of cuts this year.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't know, right? Because the other thing, the other elephant in the room. Is there another elephant in the room?
I don't know. This room's getting pretty jammed with elephants. Don't worry. Mark's going to drive his bus over all of them pretty soon.
You need a big bus to throw an elephant under it. No, but the United States, what's happening there? Like, we can chart our own course, kind of, sort of, but
what is that country?
Whatever is happening there. Yeah. And so from what my limited knowledge is that inflation is not really under control. Yeah. It's not really it's certainly not at that 2% level. We're definitely not there yet that they kind of target that for whatever reason, 2%. We're not there yet. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that. Certainly not in the States. We have a slowing economy. I would argue we're in a recession. Most people wouldn't say that yet, but you look at GDP growth, right? 7 straight quarters of decline
in Canada,
and that separation from further separation from the States.
All the insolvencies and business insolvencies spiking up, right?
Yeah, you had a good point about that, right? The what happens with an insolvency.
Yeah, so I think if business insolvencies have a massive spike to them, when a company goes out of business, they're not you can't just flip the switch and have the business exist again, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about business insolvencies, that's going up, okay, whatever. Just a bunch of business owners lose their business, and then but like in terms of product, like GDP production for the economy, jobs, right? Like a vibrant, healthy economy has a lot of business starts, investment. And if you all of a sudden kill a bunch of businesses, right, the insolvencies go way up, and that's kind of driven in part by interest rates, making things impossible to afford.
Yeah.
Those businesses go away. And I think you mentioned it to me, like if my business crashed, would I start another one tomorrow and start like, all of a sudden employing more people and going at it again? Like,
Yeah,
I'd probably get a job.
Well, A, you would probably have no money to do that because
Yeah.
you just went broke. And B, you would have no desire because
Yeah.
you just went broke.
Yeah.
Like, right?
So
for
flick the switch to go back to
Yeah.
full production is not going to happen.
No. So yeah, you drop interest rates. That's great. Maybe insolvencies start to level off or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they even start dropping, but that doesn't start new businesses.
Yeah.
It's a multi-year process, right?
That's like the comments around inflation. Like inflation at 2% means things go up in price, right?
At 2%.
Yeah.
They're not
and
going down in
because
price.
inflation dropped from 3 down to 2 doesn't mean inflation went, like the house or the prices or anything went down, and when it went up slower.
Yeah, somebody, I should have brought this up. Somebody did a survey on that, and I think it was in the US, and like people just don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, because Biden made a tweet about how, we've, I can't remember if it was grocery stores or just businesses in general.
He probably can't remember either. So. Sorry.
Come on, man. No, how that now that inflation is going back down, we better see prices drop.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you understand how that works? So then they did a survey of people. Nobody understands this.
Including Biden.
Well, he doesn't understand much, but presumably this is his handlers putting this out, right?
Yeah, so say that again. If
inflation drops, prices don't drop.
Yeah.
Prices increase slightly less
So all
fast.
of the Two Stewards listeners should understand that by now.
Hopefully. But it is kind of you have to think about it for a minute, right? Because you think, oh, inflation is dropping. Okay, good. Prices will drop. Like, no, inflation is the measurement of how fast prices are going up.
Yeah.
So it's like a car, right?
Has inflation, just think about it if you're a listener, like has inflation in your lifetime ever been negative?
No. And that's why it's so hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a car with a speedometer. As long as that speedometer is registering anything, the car is moving.
Yeah.
And it's moving farther from its original point. So if that original point was, the price of eggs at a $2 a dozen, right? As long as that car is still moving, like maybe it's going at 100 kilometers an hour, which means that, you could equate that to the price going up really fast.
During
Well, if
COVID.
it slows down to 20 kilometers an hour,
you're still getting further away from.
You're still moving further away from that original price. And that's what inflation is. It's that runaway car. And unless that car goes into reverse, prices don't drop.
Yeah.
But I think the study kind of showed that most people don't get that. They think once inflation drops, prices drop.
Yeah. So, and
that's tied to inflation expectations.
There is no reverse gear for the inflation. Like there is no, the government is pushing the brake. They're just like tapping the brakes, right?
Well, there could be, right? A severe economic downturn.
Yeah. We'll just tap the brake, whatever. They slow down to like coasting speed. And then, there is no reverse handle.
Yeah.
On this machine.
It's only
on this machine.
It's 5 gears and they all go that way. So anyways, that's just a little rant on I think we're in a recession and inflation. Sure, maybe it's slowing down a bit, but it's still if things are unaffordable now, if we even at 2% inflation, which I would argue is much higher, it's still increasing unaffordability.
Yeah.
Unless wages increase at the same rate, and they're not.
Yeah.
And for housing especially, that's a problem. So interest rate cuts.
Yeah.
So my prediction would be that it's gonna stay pat in June anyways.
All right, I'm gonna have to say they're gonna lower it.
Okay, all right.
Because we can't both predict the same thing.
Of course.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if they held it.
Yeah.
And agreed with you after they listened to this.
I mean, most of that is based on just the states in a holding pattern.
Yeah. So if the strength of the U.S. economy can help kind of postpone the decrease, a little bit, then yeah, I kind of buy that argument. But
well, because the other effect, right? If we start to cut rates, that devalues our currency against the U.S., which is our biggest trading partner. So that's, is that a problem? I don't know. We've had it before, but it's one more factor to think of, right? Like we don't really want that. I mean, getting back to the chart you posted earlier, where's exports on our, well, manufacturing actually is that big part of our economy, second to real estate. So it would have,
a pretty significant effect on.
Yeah, I mean, like a little bit of an imbalance, I think, is okay. Like, where's that level? You want people to be incentivized to buy our products because they're cheaper, but not so much that you're producing it and you're just, there's no value, right?
Yeah.
So
they drop rates, then real estate prices go up. That means it becomes, in my opinion, it becomes a bigger share of the GDP of Canada, right? Like they're kind of, it's a rock and a hard place.
Well, and there's also fiscal dominance, which is another concept, right? Because we've talked about, inflation go up, rates come down, and you have that inverse relationship. We talked about the Phillips curve and that stuff, right? With employment. It's broken now because there's so much debt that if rates go up, inflation goes up because of payments on the debt. If rates go down, if inflation goes down, rates go up because they're trying to curb inflation because it's so unaffordable for everyone. So it's a catch-22, right? So, I mean, does it matter what happens with rates really? In this, I mean, for people who got a renewal coming up on their mortgage, yes.
Sure does, yeah.
Depending if you're fixed or variable. But anyways, that's okay. That's our official predictions. Brent says a cut. How many basis points? 25, 50?
Yeah, I'll go with 25.
Okay. And I'm saying
it's not going to happen, but yeah, I'll say 25.
Who knows, man? It's so...
They're not going to increase.
I used to be of the opinion that the government cannot raise rates because of like fiscal dominance and the amount of debt and all this stuff, right? And I was pretty hardcore in that. And I was wrong, right? They did it. And so now, I don't know. I think rates are going to be higher for longer. I think that's kind of the narrative that's been put out there, and that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. So,
yeah, hopefully you're wrong.
I guess. Who knows? What a mess.
So what's the positive message in all of this?
The positive message. I don't know. We're going to have a new government for 4 years, anyways. Come the next election, will they be able to do anything? I don't know.
So if you're an old person with a house, the prime minister's looking out for you. Housing will retain its value.
Yeah. Okay. Costs, that's a positive.
And especially the cost of the young generation coming up.
Yeah. But what's that?
You deserve it.
One thing that popped in my head. We talking about
bouncing around in there?
Oh yeah. It's a big empty space.
Yeah.
It's like ping pong balls, right? Bong, bong.
Yeah.
No, they talked about the election, right? There is some election prep. I wonder if there's election prep happening, not for this election, but for the one after that. Because I think most, if you're in the Liberal Party, in Canada, if you're in the Liberal Party, you got to know you're going to get demolished in the next election.
Yeah.
So what's your strategy? I would just be like, yeah, let Trudeau stay in because
who cares?
Yeah. And I'm not going to make a run for the leadership right now because we're going to get demolished. So let's just let his legacy burn out. But all these things like the administration bracelets and stuff like this isn't fodder for the upcoming election. This is stuff for the election after that. This is, and I don't know, I guess they don't get this, but if I'm Polyev, whatever, and I'm inheriting a mess of an economy, right? And it's, in 4 or 5 years, it's still going to be a mess. And so what's my answer going to be? Well, I'm going to point to stuff like this.
Yeah.
Pointing at a piece of paper on the table. But
yeah.
I'm going to point to stuff like this 5 years from now saying, hey, remember when we had out of control housing crisis and, all these foreign students with nowhere to live and homelessness and opioid addictions and all this stuff. What was the Liberal government doing? They're parading around with these bracelets. They were not paying attention to anything.
Yeah.
Right. And they're saying we're going to make house prices have to stay up. Right. This stuff's going to come back in 5 years. This is an election issue 5 years from now. So I don't know what I'm trying to say with this, but like they should start being serious now, I think is my advice. Not that anybody listens or cares, but start to
all
be
those
serious.
People talking about the problem is part of the problem. We just got to get our tools and start building houses because
exactly.
Get built.
Yeah, that's true. Or maybe we need to run for office, Brent.
Yeah.
Either way.
All right, you have my vote.
Okay, well, thanks, folks. So, death of single-family housing and interest rate predictions. Those are your 2 takeaways from this episode.
Yeah, sweet. And if you want to come check out our ADU tour, we got her all lined up.
Oh, that's
June
right.
15th.
Yep.
So,
send a message into the show.
We'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet.
Okay, thanks for listening, folks. And until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.